I should have really saved this game for Halloween, but I've been itching to play it for a while. I've got my fancy glass clicker-free pen and red ink, waiting for me to begin diarising my character's life as a vampire. But before I get into it, hello everyone and welcome, subscribers old and new viewers. So 1,000-Year-Old Vampire is a journaling game where you document how your vampire was turned and how they live and adjust their new life going forward. You roll a d6 and a d10 to determine the prompt that will guide your journaling. Without getting too bogged down into the rules, I'm going to skip to what attributes make a finished vampire who is game ready. It could be helpful to think of the vampire at this stage as a fully formed D&D character who has all their skills and equipment and backstory ready. In 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, a game-ready vampire has 3 skills, 3 resources, a mark, 3 mortals, 1 immortal, and 1 experience in each of their 5 memories. Hopefully how these attributes come into play will become clear as I start rolling up for prompts and writing. I'm going to take you along the journey of how I create my vampire, as it does require a bit of journaling and thought. So who will my vampire be and when will they be alive? Now, old viewers of my channel will know I have a liking for the Tudor period, so I want to place my vampire's life or origin story in that time. And I want them to be female. Actually, what would be cool is if I could tie this into the D&D game I'm writing, which is all about rescuing Anne Boleyn from the tower. Sort of we said this person was a close friend of Anne. Or, do you know what would be quite interesting, especially if they're going to be around for a long time, is that they could be the midwife who delivered Elizabeth I. That way there is a bit of a connection to the next generation. Our soon-to-be vampire was born in 1509, which would have made her around 24 when Elizabeth was born in 1533. But what should we call our midwife? How about Sarah Jacob? And she was born into an upper-middle-class family, as she would need to be to get access to court. I'm now going to create an experience that will form part of her first memory. So in the game, you're allowed 5 memories, each containing 3 experiences. The first experience I'm going to write will be quite simple and tell us a bit about who she is and her social standing. I'm Sarah Jacob, daughter of the Duke of Northumberland. My education in France has made me a fine and upstanding lady serving the court of Henry VIII. So from that I get she is very proud and privileged. Interesting. I will add an experience to each of the 4 other memory buckets, but I want to fill out the resources, etc. to give me a bit of thinking time and the opportunity to tie these resources to the experiences I will be creating. Okay, next I'm going to make 3 mortals. So these are people who are important in her life. The first mortal will be the one and only Anne Boleyn, the charismatic queen married to Henry VIII. She needs no further introduction. Her second mortal will be her husband, Duke Richard Jacob of, let's say, Sussex. What's he like as a person? Richard is a kind husband and is confidant to King Henry VIII. He's very cool under pressure and is adept at handling the king's whimsy. He loves his wife Sarah very much and is supportive of her continuing her education. The third mortal is Sarah's father, the Duke of Northumberland. We won't give his full name here. He is very overbearing and old-fashioned. He was resistant to sending his daughters to France for their education. He resents the fact that his daughter Sarah wields power at court, despite it benefiting him. We now move on to the skill section, so Sarah needs 3 skills. The first I've chosen for her is medicine, as she's a midwife, so she needs to understand how the body works, and other basic things like sewing up a wound and using herbs and tonics. Next is diplomacy. All that lovely education in France has taught her to be politically savvy. She's also learned a lot from her husband, Duke Jacob too. Her last skill is history, which complements the other 2 nicely. She understands the importance of past events and how they can influence the present. Crucial for any court lady if she wants to keep her head. Bit of foreshadowing there. Next up is resources, so I could choose 3 resources and I want to relate these to her skills. So first up is a surgeon's kit. This will be very useful for any medical emergencies on her travels. Next, her prayer book, which was gifted to her by Anne Boleyn. This is her most treasured possession. I'll insert a picture of Anne Boleyn's prayer book so you can get an idea of what one would look like. Lastly, I'm including a diary. So this is a very important resource as Sarah can offload memories into it when she begins to run out of space. To make that clearer, when I run out of space when journaling. There are some rules around this and I will explain them when or if I begin writing memories into it. The diary is a small leather-bound journal with a brass lock, very unassuming. Now I'm going to fill in some more experiences into these memory buckets. So my next experience is going to be quite a significant one. She remembers delivering baby Elizabeth I. I'll never forget the day I helped Anne safely deliver Princess Elizabeth. We were so full of joy, despite the obvious. The king was happy, if only for a few moments. The third experience that will go into memory bucket 3 will be her invitation to court. My father was out hunting when a letter arrived. My mother was so happy. If it weren't for her pushing for my education in France, none of this would have been possible. My fourth experience will again hark back to her childhood, and I want to dig a bit deeper into her relationship with her father. So I'm thinking he was much of the mindset, I had it tough, so should you. Also, I want him to be similar to Henry VIII in that he was fixated on having a son so much that he was disappointed in his daughters. I'll never forget the day I nearly drowned. I was learning to swim and my father pushed me into the deep end of our lake. When I began sinking, my nanny jumped in to save me. If it wasn't for her, I could have died. Her last experience will be more of a milestone and another significant life event. I've left this till last as chronologically she is now older. This one is a happier experience and is about her wedding. The sun shone brightly as we made our way to the abbey. I've never seen my mother and sister look so happy. I'm the most blessed woman in the world, surrounded by love. So, as we can see, there is a bit of a theme emerging with some of these memories. We have coming of age with regards to her invitation at court, finding acceptance or love with regards to her marriage to the Duke of Sussex. One thing I forgot to mention is that experiences are meant to be just one sentence long. I know some may overspill into two, but yet the whole point is to write something succinct, powerful and evocative. The game recommends following the structure, description of event and how did it make you feel. Enriching or supplementing the experience with a longer journal entry is also an option. So if you have a massive notebook to fill and really want an immersive game, I'd recommend this. To be honest, if I wasn't making a video, I'd probably take that route, but I don't want to bog you all down with my whimsy. Also, if there is a particularly long prompt, the experience doesn't need to cover all points. That said, if there is a prompt and I vibe with it, I may add a journal entry alongside it. We'll see. Right, what do we have left to create? An immortal. So an immortal is a creature that turned our protagonist into a vampire. So my immortal is going to be called Antoinette. But how exactly did she turn Sarah? Let's say Sarah was visiting France, at the old estate where she was educated. Antoinette was one of her first friends and they were tutored together. But Antoinette was always a bit clingy with Sarah, maybe a bit possessive. However, this wasn't much of a problem for Sarah, as she knew her home would always be in England, and being separated from her by the English Channel would help. However, many years later, Sarah revisits Antoinette and her family after she safely delivered Princess Elizabeth. Technically, this visit was instigated by the king to spread the good news of the birth of the princess to the esteemed French noble families. The day before Sarah's departure, Antoinette invites her for a stroll through the estate's garden. According to Antoinette, they haven't been able to spend a lot of time together. This isn't just any garden though. There is a life-size marble chessboard, hedge mazes and limestone water fountains. At this point in the evening, the sun is setting. This is when Antoinette suggests Sarah should explore the maze with her. It's to die for, apparently. Sarah is naturally apprehensive, but Antoinette reassures her that she knows the way and they'll get out before it gets dark. Reluctantly, Sarah follows her in, but something in her gut warns her that this is a mistake. However, the cost of upsetting Antoinette isn't worth her protest. Sarah is about halfway through the maze when, out of nowhere, a dove flies out of one of the hedges. She jumps back in alarm, knocking into Antoinette, who takes her chances and sinks her teeth into Sarah's shoulder, scraping her fangs against the collarbone. The venom from the bite burns and stings, but within seconds the pain alleviates and Sarah feels almost woozy. She falls unconscious and just after this, Antoinette pulls a handkerchief from a pocket in her dress, wipes the blood from her mouth and screams "wolf" at the top of her lungs. Years later, the bite mark that Antoinette left on Sarah's shoulder still weeps, a bitter reminder of the evening her life as she knew it ended. She braids her hair and lets it drop to one side to cover the wound, or chooses dresses that have a high neckline. So that's our vampire, Sarah Jacob. I probably elaborated on the immortal for far too long there, but I was in a whimsical mood. So let's begin with our first roll. So on a d6 that's a 4, and on a d10 that's an 8. So if you subtract the 4 from the 8, we are left with 4. Let's look at prompt 4. Editing Lauren here, I think that should be 5 as you start on prompt 1 and add the dice total to it. I do something similar for the next prompt, but I correct myself after that. You are exposed and flee to a neighbouring region. Lose any stationary resources, check a skill. A mortal flees with you. What new names do you adopt among strangers? Well, that started off by throwing us in the deep end. Okay, so I'm presuming the mortal is one I already know, so that's easy. Sarah will flee with her husband. I had to flee London and took my husband with me. I'm distraught, but at least I'm not alone. New names are Marguerite and Charles Vidal. As we boarded the merchant ship to France, I fed on one of the drunkard sailors who passed out on the dock. We've burned everything to the ground so I can survive. While fleeing, Richard cut his hand as we climbed over the stone walls that surrounded our home. Well, our old home. It took everything in me not to turn. I poured gin on the wound and sewed it up as best as I could. I just pray it doesn't grow an infection. Now, I need to check a skill because I don't have any stationary resources. Well, any that are listed. A stationary resource is one that can't be moved, such as a house. So for this, I'm checking diplomacy, as she has managed to talk herself and her husband onto a boat and knows that they have the support to start a new life in France. I'm 2 skills down already. This is bad. If I can't check or lose skills and resources, I die. So I've checked medicine and diplomacy. All I have left is history. Okay, so after a skill is checked, I can't use it again. However, I have memories still tied to that skill that still have the capability to influence me. If I lose a skill, I can't use it again, and I have no memory of even using that skill or learning it. Therefore, it has no influence. I think that's what the game means. That's what my interpretation is anyway. Right, so what memory will this go in? Memory bucket 5, alongside the experience of her wedding day. It may seem an odd choice, as this is a very traumatic event, but I think it fits better with the theme of her finding redemption through being with her husband. So next roll on the d6 is 4, and on a d10 it's 10, so 10 minus 4 is 6. Okay, editing Lauren here. I went to prompt 6 instead. I was supposed to move along 6 prompts. I do correct this in the next part of this game. Prompt 6 reads, a mortal character begins serving you. Who are they? Why are they drawn to you? Create a new mortal character. Now, this is a nice prompt. Actually, now I'm playing this, I can see why experiences are 1 sentence long, as when you're creating these memory buckets, it makes everything much easier to read and digest. My new serving girl Cassandra has been invaluable to me. I never thought I'd make another friend again, but we have so much in common. She has a thirst for knowledge, and Richard and I are tutoring her in everything she needs to become a lady of high esteem. I said I wouldn't do journal entries, but I feel this one needs some elaboration. Since leaving London, our lives have been a whirlwind. When I arrived in Calais 5 years ago, I was restless and hungry. I have no idea how Richard put up with me. I thought he'd be repulsed by what I've become. When I told him about Antoinette, he was horrified, but I had to go crawling back to her with my towel between my legs. Fortunately, because Richard and I speak French as well as the French, we could pass with new identities, with little help from Antoinette, of course. I always hate her for what she did to me, to us, but at the same time, my survival up till now has been dependent on her. Okay, so I'm going to put this experience in memory 3, which also contains her acceptance letter to court. I feel the arrival of Cassandra marks a new turning point in her life, maybe a bit of hope. Let's say much like what her letter of invitation to court did. Next prompt, let's go. On the d6, that's a 1. The d10 is a 9. 9 minus 1 is 8. Now, we were on prompt 6, so we will move forward 8, which takes us to prompt 14. Oh no, hang on. Oh, I can't be dead. Okay, right, let's have a look at what to do in this situation. This is a catastrophic prompt. An enemy character uses a lost resource to turn your few new friends against you. Check 3 skills to regain the resource, or check on a skill to barely survive. Which former friend did you kill? Where did you flee? Okay, let's read the rules. If you're instructed to check a skill but have no unchecked skills available, lose the resource instead. Likewise, if you cannot lose the resource when instructed to do so, check a skill. If you are unable to check or lose a skill or resource, the game ends. Okay, as I can substitute one for another, do I lose 3 resources to regain the 1 resource? That only leaves me with 1 skill, history. Now, I've interpreted this as if I have a skill or resource left in either category, I'm alive. So even though I don't have any resources left now, because I have 1 skill left, I am still alive. Okay, right, so we've lost all our resources, the Surgeon's Kit, Prayer Book and Diary. So the diary, to clear some potential confusion, is a resource needed for my character to store memories. What I'm writing in now is a journal, so it doesn't have any mechanical influence over the game. Also, I'm going to event or pull out of the air the lost resource that's blackmailing my character, as mechanically it can't influence the game. So even though I've technically reacquired it by checking off all my other resources, I won't actively list it in the resources section. So our Sarah, or Marguerite, has lost a lot. She's fled her home with her husband, and they have new French identities. Perhaps so Antoinette betrays them. She acquires a cameo of Marguerite and Charles of their past lives as Sarah and Richard, and attempts to reveal their identities at the banquet. Perhaps Richard has aged, but Sarah remarkably looks the same. So my experience is Antoinette betrayed us. She hated how close Cassandra and I were. I will seek vengeance. This will go in memory 4 alongside the experience of her dad pushing her into a lake to swim. The theme of this memory is betrayal. Okay, so I'm going to expand this a bit more. The banquet was supposed to be a night of celebration. Cassandra has grown so much and is a lady in her own right now. She was attending with Richard and I. Or should I say Charles and I. I'll never get used to our new names. I could tell Antoinette was up to something. She wouldn't come near me. Looking back, she was either consumed with guilt or occupied with scheming. Likely the latter. When I saw her discreetly excuse herself, I followed her to her chambers, keeping a safe distance. She was so confident she was alone. God, she was always so self-absorbed. She even left the door slightly open as she retrieved the locket from her vanity. I knew instantly what it was. It was a gift from my husband on our wedding day. We already had 2 portraits commissioned that were hung in the Great Wall, and Holbein still had the sketches. Richard asked him to paint the cameos so they could be placed in the locket, so he would always be with me. We left so quickly I didn't take it with me. I'd never thought I'd see it again. Seeing Antoinette dangle the locket playfully and admiring it in the candlelight lit a fire in my stomach. I don't know what came over me, but I stormed into the room and grabbed the back of her neck, hurling her hard into a wall. I picked up the locket and tucked it up my sleeve. I turned and left without saying a word. I could feel Antoinette's eyes burn into my back as I turned and made my way to the stairs. When we returned home, our cottage was ablaze and we lost everything, again. Even my beloved prayer book from Anne. God rest her soul. I knew that witch Antoinette was behind this. Mark my words, she will suffer. Well, that was intense. Let's roll for the next prompt. So that's a 2 on a d6 and a 2 on a d10. Oh, so that's a 0. So we stay where we are. Oh, nice. This is a time jump. You were born in a time and place much different than that in which you find yourself now. What values must you set aside to survive in this strange world? Create an appropriate contemporary skill based on your most recent memory. What new name have you recently adopted? Oh, okay, so my most recent memory, I'm classing as the one that contained the most recent event, which is our protagonist wanting to seek revenge for Antoinette's terrible act of violence. This memory also has the experience of her dad throwing her in a lake. So we've taken a lot of trauma with us into the future, so skill-wise, what should I choose? Okay, maybe she is trained as an assassin who only takes contracts out on people who have violated her own moral code. Yes, I like the sound of that, so let's take her up to the present day. So around 500 years have passed, and her skill is stealth. Her experience reads, unlike my old aristocratic self, I live a simpler life now, and my purpose is ensuring justice is maintained. I've reclaimed my old name, Sarah Jacob, but I have several pseudonyms to protect my identity. Now I'm going to put this in memory 3 as this bucket represents change or hope. Sarah is now very strong. If we think back to when she was bitten by Antoinette, who then went on to control her, she's now very much in control of her life. Let's journal this one out. It's the 500th year of Richard's passing, and I still think of him often. I never wanted to curse him to this life of mine, and I stayed with him till the end. He died peacefully in his sleep when he was 54. The doctors back then, if you could call them that, said it was bad blood, but I know better now. Cassandra married and moved away a few years after the banquet, when our cover was almost blown. She kept in touch and went on to have 4 beautiful children. I'm still in her family's lives. I drop in every now and then for a while and then disappear until there's a new generation and I take on another role. It was only after she passed that I brought my vengeance upon Antoinette. I couldn't risk hurting those I loved if I failed. She actually fled a few months after she burned my home to ashes. In a weak moment, I actually considered making peace with her. I asked my coachman to take me to her manor. However, when I had arrived, it had all but been abandoned. Well, I say abandoned. It was maintained with staff, but Lady Antoinette had long gone. It's an art gallery now, would you believe, purchased by the French government 100 years ago as a building of historical importance. By the time she left, she had no surviving relatives. Her mother and father succumbed to the plague while I was living at the cottage with Richard, just before Cassandra arrived. She never had children before becoming what we are. When I finally tracked her down, she was in Madrid, and she had completely reinvented herself. She couldn't fool me, though. Breaking into her home was easy. Till this day, I wonder if she just let me. I didn't have the heart to kill her in the end. All the anger I felt had gone. I didn't even want to settle the debt for what she had put me through. It was after that I joined the Guild of Assassins. Well, I say joined, they found me. Apparently Antoinette was on their list for a while, but she evaded every attempt on her life. not just evaded, but also eviscerated anyone who came close to harming her. They don't know what I am, and they never suspected what Antoinette was either. She was just another corrupt aristocrat who got herself involved with the wrong people. The fact that I got out alive caught their attention. So to recap, I've got 2 skills left, history and stealth. So quite a good combination. And no resources, so we are still on very thin ice. Actually, I'm going to summarise everything so far. So we have memory 1. I'm Sarah Jacob, daughter of the Duke of Northumberland. My education in France has made me a fine and upstanding lady serving the court of Henry VIII. There are no other events in this memory, it just has one event. Memory 2 reads, I'll never forget the day I helped Anne safely deliver Princess Elizabeth. We were so full of joy, despite the obvious. The king was happy, if only for a few moments. Memory 3 is full and contains these 3 events. My father was out hunting when the letter of my invitation to court arrived. My mother was so happy. If it weren't for a push for my education in France, none of this would have been possible. The second experience is, my new serving girl Cassandra has been invaluable to me. I never thought I'd make another friend again, but we have so much in common. She has a thirst for knowledge and richer than I, a tutor her in everything she needs to become a lady of high esteem. The third experience is, unlike my old aristocratic self, I live a simpler life now, and my purpose is ensuring justice is maintained. I've reclaimed my old name. So, Memory 4 has 2 experiences. Experience 1. I'll never forget the day I nearly drowned. I was learning to swim and my father pushed me in the deep end of our lake. When I began sinking, my nanny jumped in to save me. If it wasn't for her, I could have died. Experience 2 is Antoinette. Antoinette betrayed us. She hated how close Cassandra and I were. I will seek vengeance. Lastly, Memory 5 also has 2 experiences. Number 1. The sun shone brightly as we made our way to the Abbey. I've never seen my mother and sister look so happy. I'm the most blessed woman in the world, surrounded by love. Experience 2. I had to flee London and took my husband with me. I'm distraught, but at least I'm not alone. So the skills I've checked and have are medicine, that was checked, diplomacy checked, and I'm left with history and stealth. Resources I have lost, my surgeon's kit, prayer book, and diary. So I'm looking at the time here and want this next chapter to be my last for this video. A tactical pause to be continued, if you will. We've got our vampire to 500 years, which is fantastic. We could potentially do another time jump, but what I'm interested in is maybe looking at some alternate endings and using those instead of building up to the endings in the book. I am looking forward to continuing the game and losing memories and generally growing older, but I also want this video to act as a standalone in its own right. The prompts get more bleak and deadly the further you move along, and I'm quite a bit off those. That said, prompt 14 and 4 nearly killed my protagonist, or Sarah Jacob, very early on in the game. So there is a chance of some games ending quite early, so be warned. So there are 5 alternate ending prompts. I'm going to roll a d10. Numbers 1 and 2 are prompt 1, 3 and 4 prompt 2, and so on. So let's see what we get. So I rolled a 10, so that would be prompt 5. Oh, this is really good. Actually, this is more than good, as this has created such a strong arc. I'm going to read it out. To be honest, skimming all of these prompts now, they are all great, but this one is ideal. You live for another 1,000 years. For now, though, you find for a time true peace and stability. Gain 3 additional permanent memory slots, 2 mortal characters, 2 resources, and 2 skills. Whenever you feel excited to return to play the game, play the same character starting at prompt 0. Any prompts which are filled in now stay filled in for this second season. As you enter the future, try not to worry too much about science fiction or world building. Invent as it comes up and assume people remain fundamentally the same throughout. What an ending, or tactical pause. So we got up to a 1,500-year-old vampire. I love this game. I also really want to continue with this character with her next act. I may make a separate video in the future that will either be on my YouTube or Patreon when it's live, which will be soon. I really can't recommend this game enough, as I think subconsciously it's revealing the plot that's bubbling away in the depths of my brain. Also, the fact I said I wouldn't journal and ended up writing so much shows just how immersive this game is. I'm surprised at how layered my protagonist is with just a few prompts. It's even given me some ideas for my Ravenovia project that's still lurking behind the scenes. I'll link to the video of the short story I wrote about Strahd's mother here. I'm also surprised that despite this book being about a vampire, my imagination wasn't conjuring a lot of gore and violence. Instead, the prompts elicited a tale more about survival, love, and forgiveness, of all things. When I pick this up again, I'm intrigued to see if the story will continue in the way it has. Actually, before I forget, what I also really like about A 1,000-Year-Old Vampire is the appendices. For example, there is a number table you can use if you don't have dice, and Appendix 3 is a really useful and beautifully designed consent tool. It's a tricoloured flower signalling a traffic light system. The feelings the game conjures are categorised into 3 colours. If you'll spend a lot of time in the red, which suggests you are feeling uncomfortable, take a look at why the chapters are bringing up these emotions, and maybe steer clear from them. There is also a really lovely interview from the game writer as well. Anyway, that's all for today, folks, and I'll see you in the next one.